is the Bizarre Floor Road. So continue straight down this road. You're going to hit the town of Full. Bastogne is south of us. North is that away. The main northern road that comes out of Bastogne runs from the town north into Foy. It's an intersection, runs north to a slightly larger village called Noville, and then eventually it continues north up into a beautiful spa town that actually has a castle. It's early in the morning, but they have a Panther tank in town. It was a Panther tank that it flipped over off of a bridge, and the locals salvaged it, and it was kind of in their town square for years, and it got fallen into disrepair. And then a few years back, the Bastogne War Museum, in conjunction with the Belgian government and Belgian military and the town, were able to take the tank to a restoration facility and get it completely redone, so it's still back in the town. But the Germans are attacking from the north and attacking from the east. Now, when the 101st, so we're going to step back. The Germans attack on the 16th of December. Easy companies in Mormelon, they're, passes to Paris, watching movies, getting replacements. On the 17th, at this point, Ike, Bradley, Monty, nobody's sure if this is a spoiling attack or if it is a major attack. We don't know, because the intelligence failure, and this was across the board, and it wasn't out of, ignorance, or there was probably a little wishful thinking in it, was that the Germans just didn't have the resources to conduct a major operation of this size. They didn't have the armor, and particularly they didn't have the fuel. But Hitler had this idea in a dream back actually in September. And so he comes up with this idea, and the Germans do attack, and as we said yesterday, they attack into a quiet part of the line where they're either brand new divisions or they're divisions that have been really torn up, particularly in the Hurtgen Forest. But those units will put up an exceptional fighting defense. And to the east here is the 28th Division of the Pennsylvania National Guard. They're the ones who took the worst of it in the Hurtgen Forest, and now they're going to be literally at the point of the German attack. So it's not going to be until late on the 17th that the 101st is going to get the alert that they might be going somewhere. They move out by noon on the 18th in open trucks. What's shown in the miniseries, and if you see the great old James Whitmore movie, Battleground, which was made in the late 1940s, and it's incredibly accurate, they show everybody in the back of covered deuce and a halves. What Easy really rode in were these massive 40x8 train car sized open bed like semi trucks, and because that was what they could get, and that's what they could stuff the most guys in. So the 120-mile trip from Mormelon to Bastogne was done in the open, standing up.
Standing up.
Yeah.
Standing up.
In winter.
In winter. So 120 miles of that, the roads are great.
Yeah.
So they're actually, the 101st gets to Bastogne first, though the 82nd was originally given the task. We just somehow managed to get here first. The 82nd is actually going to swing around and head up north, and they're going to see a lot of action on the northern shoulder of the Bulge. The mini-series at the end of the last episode talks about how, the 101st is here in Bastogne, they're completely alone, no artillery support. Okay, that is actually 100% wrong. It's one of those little things, because up to the German attack, Troy Middleton's 8th Corps headquarters had been here in Bastogne, and a corps has 3-4 divisions underneath it, and you have corps level artillery. So that's like really big artillery that the corps commander can divvy out to his divisions and move them around. So when Ike and Bradley ordered Troy Middleton to evacuate his corps headquarters out of Bastogne to the west, the 101st is heading in. This is also where elements of the 10th Armored Division move in. Armored divisions, which had a lot of tanks, tank destroyers, and armored infantry, were split up into what they called combat commands. Every armored division, this isn't testable, so it's okay, had 3 elements: Combat Command A, Combat Command B, and then Combat Command R for reserve. And each one of these combat commands was a what we call combined arms. They had a little bit of everything. So I said tanks, tank destroyers, anti-tank guns, armored infantrymen running around in half tracks. They had engineer support, so they were really a one-stop shopping mechanized force. And so there was one combat command under a guy named Colonel Rose here. And initially, when the Corps headquarters left, he's in command of Bastogne until the 101st gets here. But Middleton leaves all his Corps artillery here, all his artillery assets. And these are big 155 millimeter long tom guns. In this case, mostly manned by all black artillery units. And there's also some other artillery. So there are a lot of artillery assets. And this is, when we say, if this happened, then that could have happened. It could have gone better, it could have gone worse. When the 101st gets up here, Maxwell Taylor's in Washington, D.C., briefing Congress and General Marshall about the Normandy operation in Market Garden. And so Tony McAuliffe, who is the assistant division commander, takes over command of the division. Well, guess what skill set Tony has? He used to be in charge of the division artillery. He's an artilleryman. So here's an airborne artilleryman who recently has been used to using all this little tiny stuff, and now he's handed everything in the menu. And he and Rose, the armor commander, get along right away. And Rose is like, you weren't my chain of command, but you tell me where, you ask me, tell me where you want my tanks. And McAuliffe was like, I know airborne stuff, so he knows infantry and he knows artillery. He goes, but I don't know tank stuff. And Rose is, I got your tank stuff covered. And so the actual defense is 360 degrees, 101st is out, and then you've got elements of the 10th Armored running around providing support. Those guys are moving all the time. They're tanks, they're tank destroyers, and then the artillery is firing in the town itself. And that's where, before the sky clears around Christmas, that we're running critically low on artillery ammunition. So as far as Easy Company goes, trucking all night, on the 19th, they get off their trucks to the west of town. They march through the town, and then the entire 506 is ordered out to this section to go to the east and to the north of Bastogne. This rail line was supposed to be the regimental boundary between the 501st that would be taking that sector and the 506, which would be taking this sector, leading up to Foy and the Foy-Bastogne Road. When I came here years ago with Buck Compton, the woods were actually almost right up to the bus stop. And I remember we got off the bus and Buck said, watch the difference when you step into the woods. See how nice and sunny it is.
Oh, yeah.
Follow me.
Okay. Wow, yeah, check that out.
didn't wear my combat boots.
Yeah, temperature.
No, she didn't.
Backpack.
Yeah.
You don't need something.
As you can see, it's very, this is what it would have looked like, because again, this is a forestry tract deliberately planted for harvesting. So the trees, this one's gone a little up, they had a lot of new growth, but they're typically planted in rows, but even then, wherever you are, it's very confusing, but it's very dark. So imagine it's overcast, cold, snow on the ground, mist, dead silent, sound travels, and it was very easy to become disoriented. So when the 506 and when Easy Company moves up into this area late on the 19th, it's dark and they don't know where they are. The guys just don't have, lower down have maps. They're just following along, and they're supposed to tie in with the 501st. It's over here, and that in the after action reports around this time, it shows Easy is able to tie into Fox Company on the flank, but they weren't able to find anybody from the 101st. So like initially we've got this gap between the two regiments, and the Germans are also kind of probing because they're not sure where anybody is. So on the 21st of December, we said this was a rail line. A patrol was sent out from Easy Company. They're on the other side of the road, the Bizery Foy Road. 9 guys in the patrol, and they're to try and, one, see if they can find the 501st, and 2, find out where the Germans are. And so they're actually using the rail line as a guide. They're going to be going down, and you can barely see, but about 500 yards or so down, the ground starts to slope up a little bit. And a young paratrooper named John Julian was lead scout, what we call point. In the series, they show Babe Heffron, I forget who he was talking to, but he said, that kid in my hole, he's a virgin, new kid. Well, and I understand why they're establishing that, but John Julian, along with a guy named J.D. Henderson, who's in Easy, and Babe all went to airborne school together. So Babe was very close to John Julian and J.D. Henderson. They had even made a pact at airborne school, as young men do, that if one of them were to die, the others would go visit their family. So these 3 became very tight, and they get to Aldbourne when Easy is still in Normandy, and they're waiting to be, their replacements, but they all wind up going into the same company. So they were all pretty happy about that. Unfortunately, they run into a German machine gun position. It sees them first. John Julian is struck in the neck. He does go down. The rest of that is very, very accurate. They made multiple attempts to try and get out to save Julian's life. The fire was just too intense and they weren't able to do it. and they had to withdraw. Tomorrow we're going to go visit John.
Is he in Luxembourg? Oh, he's in Luxembourg.
He's in Luxembourg. So we're going to go see John tomorrow. And you'll notice on the grave, it's his date of death is 1 January. And what that means is that's when his body was recovered. So you may have been mortally wounded on a day, but the day you died, or the day that they could prove that you died. Because at this point, he was seriously wounded, but he wasn't missing necessarily. But the last they'd seen him, he was seriously wounded. So it's not like he was dead. They verified it and came back.
You mentioned conditions and so forth. I'm trying to remember if I read, how cold did it get, like at night? I know this was the worst winter in a long
Yeah,
time.
it's sub-zero. I know it got into the single digits on the Fahrenheit scale. And, if you got outside of the woods, you had wind.
Oh, yeah.
So the wind chill factor was pretty awful. So John Julian is mortally wounded on the 21st. They're not going to recover his body until the 1st of January. And Babe says he remembers, by the way, Doc Rowe wasn't the only medic in the company. There would have been about 4 or 5 other guys. They show Ralph Spina, one of the medics, wanted Babe, one to know if he wanted to see the body because he knew he was a good friend, but also to confirm that was Julian. And Babe said he just couldn't do it. He said, I can't. And so that's the first death that Easy is going to suffer during their time in Bastogne. But they're going to be living and functioning in freezing weather, in the snow, in the fog, in these dense woods, where it is so easy to become disoriented. When we go down to the Easy foxholes, we'll talk a little bit more about how they actually moved a lot. Colonel Sink was moving his battalions around, trying to respond to the Germans who were making different probing attacks, and the casualties continued to mount and into January, even after the skies have cleared and they're able to bring in supplies, even after Patton's forces have opened up the road from the south. And by the way, Patton would not want to be a division commander under Patton, or one of his corps commanders, because he essentially took one corps, 3 divisions. One of them was an armored division and 2 infantry divisions, and those are the guys that were way south of Bastogne heading east, and they're the ones that Patton wheeled and sent up north to relieve Bastogne. And the fighting that they went through was just also horrific, because those units in the middle of their advance were being fed replacements. Individuals literally who got off of the beach at Utah, got on a truck, got trucked out somewhere, and then just went straight into combat. With obviously the replacements had terrible casualties, because it's stuff, little things you don't know. There's an example of a new guy who's got his big overcoat on, but he doesn't have it buttoned because he was cold and now he's hot, and they're marching next to a tank and his coat gets caught in the tread and he's killed. It's just these little things, and not that these guys weren't well trained individually, but it's different when you're trained as a unit. And so integrating an individual placement, and that's those 3 divisions that Patton had, they didn't turn and just white horse up here. It was very, very hard fighting, and they were taking enormous casualties. But they do get the road open, so supplies are able to come in. But the Germans at this point have also brought in more artillery. So it's their last 2.5 weeks here after the 1st of January is where German artillery really takes its toll. And it's going to take its toll on all the battalions in the regiment. I think we mentioned yesterday that the 2nd Battalion actually took the lightest casualties of anyone in the 506.
where the first battalion, we'll talk about a little later, really got torn up, as well as the 3rd battalion. So a lot of things, as it goes on, falls on 2nd battalion, and its 3 companies. So that's why Easy winds up doing a lot of moving around. So they're across the street. The woods, the Bois Jacques actually extended much closer to Halt Station, so that side of the road was wooded just like this. So eventually they are going to link up with the 501st over here, but there's still going to be a lot of moving around because back in Visery is an aid station. So anybody that's wounded up here is either taken or works their way back to Visery, where they can get to an aid station and then possibly back into Bastogne. We'll continue the story for Foxholes. Does anyone have